Speaker, the Honorable Leo Bradshaw.
Somebody causing much too much frustration, and yes, you and me, we have to stop this conspiracy. I'm telling you,
Good night, ladies and gentlemen. And Mr. Tilok Singh, thank you for your very generous words of welcome. And it's a great pleasure to be sitting next to you, Victor Roberts. I've heard about you, I've seen you, I've never had a chance to really interact with you in the past, but I plan to do that on the 10th. But Victor, you are upsetting my schedule because this building in which we are tonight is a school, right? And I teach here every Saturday. I teach technical drawing to about 15 students. I'm going to put it off on Saturday. I will let my assistant handle the students, and I will forego teaching technical drawing on Saturday to be with you. Now, what Victor is doing is very important, and he reminds me a bit of Tubal Uriah Buzz Butler. I am older than all of you here. I boast of that. I'm older than all of you. And I remember when I was a kid, Butler led a march from Point Fortin straight into Port of Spain. The march passed through Newlands, where we used to live at that time. And the people were thirsty, and they invaded our yard, and my father tried to stop them, but he couldn't. And they emptied the water tank because they were filling their bottles, right? I thought it was madness. I didn't know what it was at that time. But when I look back on it historically, that was an issue that changed the direction in which Trinidad and Tobago progressed. And I want to suspect that what is going to happen on Saturday must do the same. Let me tell you a little bit about Point Fortin. You see where you stand right now? This used to be a savanna, and the savanna was crisscrossed with big drains. When I was going to the EC school right in the back of us here, we used to jump in the drains and play. I didn't know what those drains were. Later on, I found out that they were tank traps. They were built by the British so that if the enemy invaded Point Fortin to attack their refinery, which was one of the backbones of supply of fuel to the British Navy, the tanks will not be able to cross these tank traps that we used to play in to get to the refinery. Now, a lot of you don't know it, huh? But Point Fortin developed, right, around the refinery. First of all, there was one refinery, and then they built a second one. And I worked 40 years in the oil industry in the refinery. I started as an apprentice, and I retired later. I saw the transition of the oil industry in Point Fortin from UBOT to Shell to Trintoc to Petrotrin. And there was a major change when we moved from Shell to Trintoc. What happened at that time is that the business of running the refinery ceased to be a business. It became a hobby, because the PNM, which was in charge at that time, brought in a lot of their lackeys, all of their blue-eye boys who had university degrees. Some of them only had party cards, and they brought them into managerial positions in the refinery. They didn't understand anything about refining, and they didn't care. And they did not have to care, because they were protected by the party. And the party didn't care what happened in Point Fortin. As a matter of fact, they felt that the refinery will always go on. It came to a point where they realized that they were running into trouble, and they shut down Point Fortin. Point Fortin at that time used to supply all the bitumen that was used in the British Caribbean islands. All of the islands took bitumen from Point Fortin. These days, bitumen is coming to Trinidad from Barbados and Jamaica. You didn't know that? From Barbados and Jamaica. And those refineries do not have an oxidation plant for bitumen. You can make bitumen from any crude. But if you make bitumen from the wrong crudes, you end up with a lot of wax in the bitumen, and it doesn't hold, it doesn't stick. What you've got to do is oxidize it, and we are bringing in non-oxidized bitumen into Trinidad and putting it on patching potholes with it. It's only a matter of time before the potholes will fail. A good pothole pitch repair should last no less than 8 years. I see some of the potholes are being filled with all kinds of nefarious materials now, and they're not lasting more than 3 months, if so long. Victor, you need to continue to push this government, push the people of this country. We will be behind you. If I can take Saturday off from my students to be with you, I see no reason why more than 40,000 people cannot do the same, right? To send a message to this government that we in Point Fortin are through taking stupidness from the PNM. There's something else that is happening in Point Fortin. If you look around, when you drive toward the beach and you look to your left, you will see the old refinery. And you drive through a tank farm, careful. That refinery now is overtaken with weeds. You can see the vines growing up 40 feet on the old refinery plant. That burns my heart. When I got into the refinery was doing about 20,000 barrels a day. It was upgraded to 40,000 barrels a day. And then the British left and the Dutch came in, and they put a lot of local fellas like myself and Keita Wong and Ramsey, I call a few names. And we took the refinery throughput up to 80,000 barrels a day. Wow. As soon as they brought the PNM psychophants in managerial positions, they sidelined us. And the refinery throughput went down, right, from 80 to 60 to 40. And at one stage, we were supposed to be refining 60,000 barrels a day from Venezuela. And we never made it over 2 years. We never made 60,000 barrels a day. And I can tell you, I ran that refinery already at 90,000 barrels a day, comfortably. Wow. It can be done. Things can happen. Things can change in Point Fortin, and they have to change before this little part of Trinidad runs out of control like the rest of Trinidad. Crime is coming down here. I heard there was some machine gun fire in Tiche recently. That shook me. It shook me. First of all, where are the machine guns coming from? And secondly, who the hell in Tiche owns a machine gun and dares to use it? If we don't stand up to this government, we are going to end up like Laventille, like Mova, like Waterhole, and those are the parts of Trinidad that have run out of control. And you know what the problem is? The problem is not so much policing you, although that is a sham, right? The problem is jobs. If people have jobs to go to, right, they will not get themselves into mischief. But you can't just take a man and push him into a job like that. One of the problems we have with Point Fortin is that there are a lot of jobs down at Atlantic LNG, the last remaining resource for jobs. But those people don't come from Point Fortin. Those people come from Chabonas, from Port of Spain, from Laventille, from San Fernando, because that is a highly technical operation and it requires technically skilled people. So what has the PNM done? They shut down NESC in Point that produce technically trained people. The GVC, which produced graduates such as myself. I attended GVC for 5 years before it was GVC. That is now a shadow of what it used to be. And if you look at the youth camp in Chatham, the youth camp is emasculated, right? It's not producing farmers. And if you turn your back on these essential trades and these essential professions, you are going to find a lot of idleness and people are going to run into crime, unfortunately into crime. But Victor, you have spoken over and over about this. And it's time that the talk leads into action. And action, as far as I'm concerned, for me, again, starts on Saturday the 10th. I will be with you, Victor. Right? I don't know if I can walk all the way, but I have a pickup. If I have to, I will drive. Right? But I will be there. Let me know what you want, and I will be there to support you. And I ask each and every one of you here to spread the word so that this can be a massive change of direction for the people of Point Fortin when we send a message to the government that we have had more than enough and we are not going to take it anymore. We're behind you, Victor. Thank you.